Good evening, and thank you for joining us for our first Alumni Town Hall of the new academic year. My name is Colleen Garland, and I am happy to serve as your moderator this evening. I'm sure each of you has wonderful memories of fall in Gambier, and I'm happy to report that it's just as beautiful as you remember, although today we had a trademark Gambier gray, which I'm sure you also recall. We have the stunning addition of the new Chalmers Library and some creative reconfigurations of our housing stock to accommodate the student body this fall. You may have heard that this year we have a record number of first-year students on campus enjoying their first Gambier fall, sharing Middle Path with the squirrels, seeking out library nooks and Adirondack chairs for studying. Tonight, I am excited to introduce our new Vice President for Student Affairs, Celestino Limas, who joined us just last month from Elizabethtown College in Pennsylvania, and who can let us know how the students are settling in and building community even through COVID. Jeff Bowman, our provost, is also here for a look inside the classroom, as well as Drew Kirchhoff, our associate provost and chair of the COVID steering committee. And last, but of course, certainly not least, is our president, Sean Decatur, to share a vision for Kenyon's next 5 years and answer your questions. We also have some very exciting news to share tonight. You will be among the first to hear about a stunning new matching gift opportunity to create permanent pathways to Kenyon for roughly 50 talented and diverse students whose families have limited means. As a reminder for this evening, you are all on mute to enhance the audio quality for our guests, but we'll be sure to save time at the end to address your questions. So if you have questions this evening, please submit them at any time in the submit your question in the chat feature, and we'll get to as many of those questions as we can. So please allow me to start this evening by turning things over to President Decatur to welcome our newest colleague. Sean.
Thank you, Colleen, and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in into this town hall session this evening. I hope that everyone is healthy and well wherever you may be. And it is indeed a chilly but lovely evening here in Gambier. It is my pleasure to introduce Celestino Limas, and Colleen gave a bit of a description already. I think I would add just a little bit of detail to that, in that Celestino has been with us for a bit under 40 days now, and it's been quite the beginning of a semester that he's had in joining us. And what attracted me and really excited me about the possibility of Celestino joining us when I met him this summer was his commitment to putting students at the center of our work and having a very student-centered approach to education, and his commitment to relationships, building close relationships among the student body and also with faculty and other colleagues across campus. And I'd say during this first 40 days, Celestino has done that with an incredible amount of energy and excitement. For anyone who is walking along Middle Path on any given evening, you will see Celestino with groups of students on a bench or in front of the gun gallery or in front of the library, really making those types of important personal connections, which have been so important for the experience of Kenyan students over the generations. And it is just wonderful to have someone who has understood and really lived that spirit from day one of being on campus. So it's my pleasure to introduce Celestino.
Oh, mahalo for that, President Decatur. Good evening, everyone. It's so wonderful to see you all tonight. Over the years that we're going to spend together, I hope that you're going to see me plenty, but more importantly, I really hope that I have the chance to engage with you in such creative ways. Things like this, being able to see you for family weekends, things of that nature are going to be really important to me. As both Colleen and Sean mentioned, part of why I think I was so drawn to Kenyon is the way, in fact, this place is such a relationship-driven place. It really speaks to me in a way that I think is very unique, because Kenyan students really jumped out at me when I was being looked at for this position, in that they are not going to be docile, nor are they going to be lacking of participation in the process. Kenyan students really want to own their experience, and they want to put fingerprints on exactly what it is that's happening around them, to them, and with them. For me in my career, I've definitely enjoyed that process, because I think anytime you can partner with students where there are multiple sets of fingerprints on initiatives that are both large and also small, you can have really, I think, the best product and the best educational experience. So as I got to know Kenyan students, two things jumped out at me. Number one, they are not shy. And I think that there's a certain kind of colleague who really relishes that opportunity. Kenyan students, I think, really want to know exactly the why behind decisions, but also the why behind purpose. And for someone like me, that really fills me with joy, because it's a way I can connect with people, because I am not a passive participant either. And I really think it's important when you're looking at a place to join for the rest of your career, you want to find some place that people understand exactly why you're in it. So for me, that jumped out at me about why Kenyan students are great. The second is, I think that Kenyan students really want to make certain that they can see collective enthusiasm around what it is their experience is part of. So I think when students talk to me, they want to understand how I connect with faculty, how I connect with librarians, how I connect with dining service employees to provide them a comprehensive experience. One of the things that really jumped out at me about Kenyon is the fact that learning does not occur just in a vacuum. Students expect pedagogy all the way across campus. And for me, Middle Path is such a wonderful place to do that. So yeah, as President Decatur mentioned, I do spend a lot of time on campus. My son always jokes with me that I have this ratio every day that he's always asked me, you know, Papa, did you hit it today? Meaning, am I spending more than half of my time outside of the office when I do come to campus? And every single day that I've served here at Kenyon, I've been able to answer in the affirmative for that. So it's really been a wonderful place. There are students also, one of the ways that I think I connect with them in different ways that I think can be a bit unique. I text with students a lot. And so at any given day, I'm probably texting with between 30 and 50 Kenyan students for two reasons. Number one, that is their preferred mode of communication. So I need to meet them in the space where they're comfortable with. But also number two, there are certain ways in which I want to be proactively engaging them about how their experience is going well, so I can help amplify those things that are really giving them joy and purpose. And then for those things that are maybe a bit of a bother, not necessarily a problem just yet, but they're a bit of a bother, I want to know how I can find those out so I can compress the distance between issue and solution. And our students really, I think, have taken to that very much so. This time of COVID, I think, has created unique opportunities for people like me to be a good shepherd in that process, because there are going to be some challenges that we're always seeing. How do you form community in times of COVID, but also wanting to stay safe? And the students very much so pointed out to me immediately when I arrived here that they did not care for the stop and start that experienced a lot of college campuses this past year. They all understood it, but they wanted to know, how can we avoid that? So the constant discussion that we have with students here at Kenyon to ensure that we are actually setting expectations that they can meet about how they can keep themselves and their community safe, that is what allows us to grow forward and actually have experiences that can be robust. I can talk more about that a little bit later on if you like, but this is just such a wonderful time to be on campus. Let me stop there, Colleen, and we can go into other things.
Well, we are so pleased to have you here, Celestino. Thank you. I'm sure that you will find that our alumni are equally enthusiastic about supporting today's students, and they will be a wonderful resource for you. Of course, this is not a semester like the ones most of our alumni remember. And as much as we are all eager to put COVID behind us, Kenyon is no different than other institutions, having to navigate it on an ongoing basis. So Drew, I know that we all hoped that you'd have less to do this fall as chair of the COVID steering committee, but could you give us a bit of a look at the situation on campus now? And in doing so, I want to highlight, we did receive a question from Allison Black, class of 91, about testing students returning to campus. So perhaps you could elaborate a bit on your thinking there. Drew?
Absolutely. Thank you, Colleen, and welcome everyone. I'm really glad to see how many people are here. COVID is still with us. I regularly drive across Pennsylvania, and if anyone drives the Pennsylvania Turnpike on the way to Philadelphia from Ohio, there's this section where you go through Kittatinny Mountain through a tunnel, and you see the end of the tunnel, and it's there coming towards you, and you get to the end of the tunnel, and there's another tunnel. So I feel like that's through Shenandoah Mountain, and I feel like that's kind of what this summer was a little brief 3-second spot of sunlight, and then we entered another tunnel. So our current status on campus, as many of you probably know, we did start the semester with a surprising outbreak of cases that came on quite quickly. We had to react very quickly to try to get that under control, and that seems to have worked. The community really worked together and managed to get around to limiting spread. We've had a total of 139 student cases on campus. Only 7 are active cases right now of students in isolation. Thankfully, most importantly, the vaccine seems to be really doing the job in terms of limiting severe illness. We've generally had mild to moderate symptoms. We've had no hospitalizations. And very happily also, we have no documented transmission in the classroom. Amongst the employees, we also currently have 7 active cases, and the total for the semester has been 21 reported cases amongst our employees. In terms of vaccination, which is the kind of cornerstone of our strategy for mitigating COVID this semester, our community has been absolutely terrific. We've mandated vaccines for our students, and we're practically fully vaccinated. We have over 98% of our students are fully vaccinated, and we've only had 15 requests for medical or religious exemptions amongst all students. Amongst staff, we have over 81% of the staff are vaccinated. Amongst the faculty, that's above 95%. We're continuing to consider a vaccination mandate, especially in light of recent announcements by the Biden administration. But given the requirements in Ohio for religious and medical exemptions, it's uncertain how far that would actually push us up. So we're working through the details of that and waiting for the actual OSHA guidelines to come out. But the COVID steering committee is actively working on that question, and I know that's of interest to many of us. Just overall, I want to point out that this is it's another tunnel, but it's a very different tunnel than the tunnel we were in last year. Given our vaccination rate on campus, it's really opened up our ability to have a much richer campus life and still maintain it in a safe environment. And it's a very different place than last fall. And even in the brightest days of last spring, we weren't able to have the kind of activity that we have on campus today, which is very heartening. And finally, to get around to the question from Allison Black, our approach this fall, and it matches many other of our peer institutions, and it was developed based on CDC guidance and in close consultation with our partners at Knox Public Health, was to not do entry testing or to start with surveillance testing. Mostly this was motivated by what we knew at the time to be a nearly comprehensively vaccinated student population. And so we followed CDC guidance there and exempted fully vaccinated and asymptomatic students from screening testing. And doing such testing without starting the students in a quarantine actually is not as helpful. And our goal was to sort of transition to really living with COVID. And we didn't want to start the semester with everyone confined to their rooms. However, of course, we have to learn from what COVID teaches us, and we're considering an approach of entry testing and pre-arrival testing, both for after Thanksgiving break and looking into the next semester. And of course, all of this depends on changing conditions, changing scientific evidence, and changing guidance from the CDC. So and I think another part of the question was about testing of our staff, and currently testing resources are available for our staff community out in the community free of charge. And so we're concentrating our information maintenance efforts on testing and managing the cases of our students through the Cox Health and Counseling Center. So I hope that clarifies things for Allison and for other members of the community who are interested in this information. And we're just going to continue to learn from this new phase of the pandemic and adjust our policies as we need to keep the college operating in a safe way and keep a rich experience for the students. Thanks, Colleen.
Thank you, Drew. And Jeff, would you like to add anything about the classroom environment and how else we're adapting?
Sure. Thank you, Colleen. It's good to see all your faces and to see such good participation this evening. So thanks for coming out to listen to an update from Gambier. We are now officially tonight exactly 4 weeks into the fall semester. And so it has gone very quickly and it's been very exciting. As Drew pointed out, some of what we've been doing with is kind of managing the challenges of a pandemic throughout the world and on campus. But one of the other things to point out is that we really have been very excited to return to a campus that is fully in person in terms of instruction after 3 semesters of very disruptive instructional experiences for our students. So there are a lot of kind of steps that we've taken to keep the entire community safe, but I would say generally one of the main messages to carry away is that the students and faculty are thrilled to be learning in conditions that seem to be approaching something like normalcy, even if they're not normalcy. And so every student and faculty member I've talked to has kind of talked about the excitement of being in classroom again with all of our students, all 4 classes on campus. So that's been wonderful. And there's a kind of energy and excitement on campus on the part of faculty members and students that we haven't been able to have or experience since, a year and a half ago. So I think that's the kind of biggest message about what's going on in the classroom. There are other things too. Colleen mentioned the fact that the Chalmers Library is now open, and it's great to see that as like a hive of activity with students studying in all kinds of different places, including there are a whole set of different group study rooms that students have already taken to very warmly, and they're populating that space in a way that's very exciting. And so that's a good piece of news for the entire campus and especially for the academic division. One other part of that that's noteworthy for us is that that building, in addition to being a place where students study and where we keep books and resources, is also a place where we've put a bunch of offices in the academic division that serve students. So the registrar and the student accessibility and support services and the dean of academic advising and the career development office are all kind of co-located right next to each other. And so there've been some kind of exciting already, even in the early weeks of this building's use, kind of synergies there from offices that did work that was very closely connected, but they were kind of spatially distant. And so that is another thing that is and has been very exciting for us. I know we had a question about, I know a couple of you have asked about the size of the class of 2025, which was large, and we have responded to that in a bunch of ways. I mean, one of the ways in which we've responded to that on campus is doing some additional hiring of faculty in areas that will be most likely to serve these incoming students. But we also did a little bit of an experiment this year by sending some of our incoming members of the class of 2025 to Copenhagen so that they will spend their first semester as Kenyan students actually abroad with 4 resident directors, 4 Kenyan faculty members, Sergey Lobanov-Rostovsky in English, and Sarah Height in English, and Irene Lopez in psychology, and Rob Alexander in environmental studies and economics. Have taken a group of about 50 students there, and we're working with a partner called DIS, which is a very well-respected off-campus study provider that we've worked with before. We actually send a lot of juniors there every year. And the reports from this kind of experiment are very promising and exciting. They seem to be having a great time. I heard from 2 of the resident directors just today about this, and they were talking about the ways in which our first-year students, even if they're not in Gambier, are throwing themselves into the life of the city in Copenhagen. They are foraging for plants apparently, and that's not because nobody's feeding them. It's because there's a kind of question about sustainability and cuisine in Danish culture, right? And they are, embarking on night safaris in the parks of Copenhagen to catalog different varieties of bats, and they are mastering public transportation in a different city, and they're actually literally plunging into the world of Copenhagen. One of our faculty members is a psychologist who likes to talk about the ways that stimuli change your emotional and physiological responses. And so after a protracted lesson about this today, she sent me a picture of her entire class like jumping into a very cold canal to experience the stimulus of what cold water does to you. And so they're having, by all accounts, really wonderful experiences. So it's a little bit of a different semester because we are kind of coming back to something more like normal. Gambier feels and the campus feels very exciting and alive with students and with the Chalmers Library. And then we also have this interesting experiment for some members of the class of 2025 about getting a kind of global perspective with their Kenyan faculty members during their first semester. So as one of the resident directors wrote to me about this group, they're wonderful, they're great, they are adventurous, they are friendly, they are kind, they are great members of the class of 2025. So it feels very exciting here 1 month into the fall semester of this academic year. So thank you, Colleen.
Thank you, Jeff. And I think that description would describe everyone on our screen tonight as well. And we probably would all love to do a semester in Copenhagen, but when you said jumping in the cold water, I might have changed my mind. So appreciate you, Jeff and Drew. In addition to preparing for these students to go to Copenhagen, Jeff and I, under Sean's leadership and with 20 other members of our Board of Trustees, our faculty, our students, and our staff, had the pleasure of serving on a planning committee to determine the college's next strategic plan, which, as you may have seen, was just rolled out yesterday. The process was launched in February of 2020 at a Board of Trustees retreat, but along with much of life, the progress there was delayed because of the onset of the pandemic. And we picked back up in earnest in August, and the result is what we're calling Foundations for Kenyon's Third Century, which lays out the priorities and strategies for the coming years. So I'd like to now turn over the podium, if you will, to our president to take a deeper dive into the strategic plan and what some of our priorities are for coming years. So Sean.
Thank you, Colleen, and thank you, Celestino, Drew, and Jeff. So we have welcomed the class of 2025 to campus, and this will be the class that graduates in our 201st year. Right? So it is a really interesting moment to think about the transition to Kenyon's third century. And the class, as Jeff was describing, the class of 2025 is quite remarkable. It has a total size so far of 559 students, 54 of whom are in Copenhagen, 505 or so are here in Gambier. It's a remarkably diverse class. 14% of the students are international, 18.5% of the students are domestic students of color. It is roughly 45% male, 55% female. It's an academically talented class that already has brought energy and creativity and excitement to campus and to Copenhagen, which is really great to see. We're starting this year with a new library, which is giving us new important lessons into how space can transform building community and academic experiences on campus. We are experimenting with a more global campus by having students start their year in Copenhagen. This is really a kind of interesting moment for Kenyon. I think a moment where the institution is strong and is innovating and creative. And so it's also a good moment for us to take a look at the future and take a look at the future more intentionally about what directions we can move in. over the course of last year, as Colleen was describing, we had a committee of students, faculty, staff, trustees that looked not only at the institution, but also looked more broadly at the landscape of higher education and thought about what are the major challenges and pressures that institutions face now. What are the things that are going to be important for our graduates in the future to be able to face and navigate? And how do we make sure that we're positioning the college to respond to these challenges as we move forward? And the outcome of this was the plan that is now up on the web and released yesterday. I encourage folks to read it, kind of save it on your iPad. It can be the thing that you sort of take a look at every night. It is what I do in my nightly ritual, but the Foundation for Kenyon's Third Century. And it's in this context that, as Kenyon is emerging from the COVID pandemic, as we have students who are facing a future in which they will face enormous challenges to our planet in the form of climate change, when we are at a moment of social political polarization, which makes it increasingly difficult for people beyond the gates of Kenyon to have meaningful conversations with each other and collaborate across difference. And when we're at a moment where technology is central to so many parts of our lives, yet the use of technology is subject to abuse without being embedded in a broader liberal arts context that can have an intentional and purposeful and ethical use of technology. We realize that there are ways in which a Kenyan education has been enduring to meet these challenges, but that we need to make sure we are making the adjustments and adaptations to keep a Kenyan education, to keep the experience relevant to students and our graduates as we move forward into the next few years. So an example of some of the priorities that we'll be pursuing over the next few years include putting an even stronger emphasis on access, so that we make sure that an outstanding Kenyan education is accessible to talented students from a broad spectrum of socioeconomic backgrounds. To add to our curriculum, especially in areas of computational studies and an understanding not only of the technical aspects of computer science, but the ways in which computation can solve problems from a range of different disciplines in a range of different areas. To put an emphasis on international experiences, recognizing that it's essential for all of our students over the course of their 4 years to have some type of international experience that might take them abroad for a semester, might take them abroad for a short period of time, but that integrates international work into their studies. That's attentive to the health and wellness and emotional well-being needs of our students. That we are also in going through a period where there is important heightened attention to mental health and mental health needs, and more pressure than ever that is leading to anxiety and depression among members of our community. How do we make sure that our campus is attentive to these needs and creating a broader holistic approach? Emerging from the pandemic, we feel it's important to reaffirm our commitment to residential education, that having people live together in campus and in community and build community here is important, and to make sure that we're attentive to our infrastructure for that, so that we will have residence halls moving into the future, which help to facilitate that community that we seek to build on campus. That we also recognize that it's important to make progress on the college's goals towards carbon neutrality, and that we strengthen our commitment to environmental literacy, and that all of our students are aware of the ways in which our studies and our actions help us to understand not just people, but the mechanisms of the planet and how we can actually help to sustain the planet into the future. To financially secure Kenyon's future. So replenishing our reserves that were depleted during COVID, but also be attentive to building our endowment as we move into the future. And also to continue our efforts to build a sense of belonging and connection among the diverse groups of folks who are attracted here to come to Kenyon. How are we going to do this? Well, we're going to do this in part on a strategy of incremental growth of the college. So by growing the college by enrollment by roughly 15% over the next 10 years, we can both better leverage the resources of campus, but also expand opportunity available to students, to a broader range of students, and control the growth of tuition overall for our students. We also would like to make adjustments to the academic calendar, creating space, perhaps a winter term or a spring term, where students can pursue in-depth experiences outside of the classroom to complement their work that they're doing inside the classroom. And finally, recognizing that these are things that Kenyon can't quite do completely on its own. We want to leverage partnerships both with our own partner organizations on campus, including the Kenyon Review and the Gun Gallery and the Philander Chase Conservancy, but also with other institutions to create pipelines of students into Kenyon, but also to create opportunities for our students to do interesting professional level work during their time here at Kenyon and as they move forward. This plan is going to really shape our priorities and our work for the next few years. And I'm really excited about getting started on this work as we start this academic year. Over the course of the next few weeks and months, you're going to be hearing new news about our strategic plan implementation rolling out as we begin to take on each of these initiative areas and make progress on kind of building a groundwork, laying a groundwork for this work moving forward. And one of the first things you're going to hear about is our attention to expanding socioeconomic diversity on campus. So expanding opportunities for access for students from a broad range of backgrounds to come to Kenyon. This is something that has been since the beginning of our history, important for Kenyon, that Kenyon is a place where talent matters more than means. And so we are a place that serves and educates students based on their skill and their talent and how they can contribute both to life at Kenyon and life after Kenyon. And it's something that is incredibly important to our broader value as an institution in society, as an institution where students who are talented can come in and graduate with the momentum and skills and network that they can use to advance and take advantage of the lift and mobility that education can provide. So expanding socioeconomic diversity, expanding access is something that's been important historically, and we really see this as a key moment for us to accelerate and make substantial progress over the course of the next few years. And so that is Colleen hinted at a big surprise reveal coming during today's event, and I'm going to hand things back to her for a moment as we look into this and dive into this announcement in more detail.
Terrific. Thank you, Sean. So first, just a quick note for those of you who are interested in diving in a bit more in the details of the strategic plan, you can find that on our website and also in your email inbox. So there is a lot there to cover, and I would encourage you to explore it. But as Sean mentioned, we have this really incredible matching gift opportunity that has come to us that we're eager to tell you more about, that can serve as a catalyst to our efforts to bring more socioeconomic diversity and really talented students to our campus. The announcement will be made to the broader community early next week, but we have a very short video we'd like to play now to introduce it and tease it out, and then throw it back to you, Sean, to follow the video.
When I think about small ecosystems like Kenyon and the potential impact of enriching the campus with students from all different backgrounds, I feel like it'll only make Kenyon better. When you find a student, and I'll say like me, student of color, student from a low income background, the impact is not only on that student. Coming to Kenyon didn't just impact me, it impacted my family, my community, the people around me. And to multiply that by 50 is huge. And I'm so excited for the potential to expose 50 more students to Kenyon who wouldn't otherwise have an ability or the opportunity or the financial means to do so.
So I am pleased to announce that Kenyon is launching in the next week the Kenyan Access Initiative. This is an exciting program that's going to allow us to basically over the next 5 years double the number of Pell or Dreamer students that we have on campus. This is a partnership with the Schuler Education Foundation. This is a national foundation that is committed to providing access to students from a broad range of backgrounds to come to liberal arts colleges for liberal arts education. The Schuler Foundation selected 5 schools that do well in both attracting diverse pools of students that have a good track record in graduating those students, retaining them, and having those students go on to success, but that lack the endowment resources to be able to bring more of those students to campus and to benefit a broader number of students. So Kenyon was selected to be in this first cohort of Schuler-supported schools. In this program, the Schuler Foundation will provide a $25 million match over 5 years. So the college can raise $25 million to go towards scholarship for Pell eligible students or Dreamer students to come to Kenyon. The Schuler Foundation will match that match that with an additional $25 million. This can actually grow up to $52 million, including an extra bonus that the foundation is offering as an additional challenge. This means that we will raise a total of $50 million to support this effort that actually will bring roughly 50 new Pell students on campus at any given moment in perpetuity. This will actually help us to grow our endowment, to be able to support the financial aid for growing the number of Pell students on campus permanently as we move forward. This is absolutely in alignment with our strategic plan goals of both increasing our socioeconomic diversity and expanding broadening the range of students, talented students who are able to come to campus. We know already from our data that we have these students in our application pool, but we've been limited historically in the financial aid funds available to be able to make offers to these students to support them with full financial commitment. The Kenyan Access Initiative is going to give us the financial means to do this. And this is incredibly exciting in terms of what it means for our campus community, what it means for our long-term efforts to increase socioeconomic diversity, and the long-term impact that this is going to have on graduates of Kenyon for many years to come. So I am super excited that this is coming out. You're going to be hearing more about this over the coming weeks, months, years. But this opportunity to add $52 million to be able to support students to come to campus is just truly remarkable.
Let me just say a word too about this and lean in and reiterate what Sean has said about how exciting this is and what really great news it is for the college. A bunch of times over the past 18 months, we have said things like, why is this horrible thing happening? This is one of those things where something truly magical is happening and finding a profoundly generous partner who's whose goals and hopes are so carefully aligned with our own core values. And it is really exciting to see this. This is, as Sean says, this is a kind of initiative that is completely aligned with our values and with our strategic plan. It builds on a lot of momentum that we've had over the past few years on the side of the faculty in terms of building classrooms and that are truly inclusive and pedagogical innovations that are really going to make Kenyon a place that is for students from all kinds of different backgrounds in a way that benefits all of those students. And this is, from my hat as provost, this is something that the faculty care about deeply and are going to be very excited about, and it's something that resonates with deep values for faculty and for the institution. So I'm just echoing what John says about what a really exciting announcement and opportunity this is for us to work with Schuler folks to build these pathways for students who otherwise would not be able to benefit from a Kenyan education.
Thanks so much, Jeff. And thank you, Sean. I hope that our audience tonight is just as excited as the three of us are. We'd like to turn now to the questions from our audience, either on this topic or on any topic that's on your mind. As a reminder, you can submit a question in the chat to the Submit Questions button. And I will go to our first question that comes from Tim Holder, class of 68, and also a parent, class of 94. Who asks, how would you describe the present socio-cultural characteristics of the Kenyan student body? Sean, would you like to take that one?
Sure. And, I would maybe begin by saying, there's no simple blanket description to describe the Kenyan student body. It is a remarkably diverse group in terms of its interests, the activities that go on campus, the academic interest and the ways in which students express their academic interest and their learning in the classroom. And I think that's something that's been true of Kenyon for some time, and it remains true of Kenyon today. And just as an example, on any given evening, you will find students on campus who are studying in seminars, students on campus who are engaged in music, drama, artistic performance, students who are working late in their art studios in Horvitz Hall, students who are engaged in any number of intense political or kind of social change, conversations, discussions, work, students who are athletes and who are working down at the Lowry Center or playing down at the Lowry Center. And the thing which I still find most interesting and exciting about Kenyon is that you have students who do all of those things, right? So student athletes who are also performers in the arts, who also are working on long-term projects academically, who are also kind of political activists and involved and engaged in that way. And that combination of things is one of the things that I think makes Kenyon really exciting.
Celestino, would you like to add anything? Again, you've got 40 days, but you've been spending a lot of time with students. Any impressions of students?
I think that Sean said it really well. What I would only augment onto that is just one clear example of what he illustrated. I recall it was last week, and I was coming up from Middle Path from the Lowry Center just in the evening like I normally do. And I had two students wave me over. So they were sitting on a bench right in front of the chapel. They were having a very spirited debate about universal basic income and whether or not it was a good idea or a poor idea. You can guess that one of the students maybe had a pretty firm opinion on this, but what I enjoyed about the conversation is as they came to an impasse, they actually looked at me and they said, Dr. Lemus, what do you think about this? So number one, I was so impressed with our students' ability to draw in others into a discussion. They were not wanting to shut out that conversation. They wanted to broaden it out. But number two, Colleen, what I so enjoyed about that moment is it led to a bigger discussion that the three of us had about what is the goal of that narrative right now. In that discussion, I asked the students, Do you want to be right, or do you want to be influential? And this, I think, teased out a different type of discourse that students wanted to understand, because it then led to a discussion between the Hill and Mount Vernon, and how maybe citizens in Mount Vernon don't quite share the same worldview that people on the Hill do, and why is that? So needless to say, 3 hours later, I had sent a text to my wife saying I was going to be running a little bit late, but that kind of moment spurred on so many discussions. And I really think that is what's driving our students right now. They want to be leaders in a very powerful way, and we're lucky to have them here.
That's a terrific example. Thank you, Celestino. Our next question comes from Veronica Howd, class of 03, who says, this all sounds wonderful. Happy to help in any way going forward. She'd like to know, what's the plan for growing the number of support resources to meet the needs of so many more Pell eligible or lower income students, possibly expanding things that already exist, such as KEEP and STEM, and adding staff to the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. So before I turn to Sean, I will say that Kenyon's success with the KEEP and the STEM program was one of the main elements of why the Schuler Foundation selected us as one of the first 5 partners, because we have support systems in place that they believe can be a model for other schools. But that doesn't mean that we can't continue to grow and get better. So Sean, would you like to add something to this question?
Sure. No, I'd love to. And hi, Veronica. It's great to hear from you. I hope you are doing well. Yes, I think these are making sure that we have the right resources in place, and that we grow those in proportion to the students that we are adding to campus is going to be critical. We haven't made specific decisions yet, but certainly things that are possibilities are growth of KEEP and STEM, and that could take a number of different forms. As you know, we have 2 KEEP cohorts and 1 STEM cohort. So, the possibility could be adding more STEM students, or readjusting the balance of KEEP students and STEM students in some form there. Certainly making sure that we have staffing support, not only in ODEI, but across campus, and a broader commitment to support for this across campus. I'd say a critical piece of this is recognizing that it does have to be a holistic campus effort to support not just these students, but all of our students. And our faculty have, over the course of the past few years, what began as a project in the natural sciences, but has grown to include faculty from across campus, what we called our effort towards inclusive excellence. There have been a number of faculty who have participated in the Kenyan Equity Institute, which is a intensive opportunity for faculty to and staff to work on how to support and engage students who come to Kenyon not only from a range of different backgrounds, but a range of different positions and needs, and how to do that both inside of the classroom and outside of the classroom, how to think about this pedagogically, how to think holistically about the support that students need. And we have to actually continue all of these efforts as part of our larger piece, not only to bring the students to campus, but to make sure that students are successful.
Thank you, Sean. Our next question comes from Jim Weiss, class of 86 and current parent, who says, I've heard rumors of the craft center's impending demise. Hopefully they've been greatly exaggerated, at least as relates to pottery wheels and the kiln. Could you elaborate on the plans for the craft center?
And I will maybe start this one and check to see if either Celestino or Jeff have more details than I have to fill in. Certainly, there is no decision to permanently end or change the permanently end or redirect the craft center in any way. I believe that this year, because of sort of needs of the building itself and kind of adjusting to post-COVID arrangements and different activities on campus, that there's been a pause on some of the craft center's activities, but this doesn't reflect a change in our long-term plans or support for the craft center. But I don't know if Celestino or Jeff, if you have more on this front.
Yeah, sure. One of the things that's always wonderful about being the new person is you get to lift up rocks and see what's underneath them. And very early on, I was encouraged by a lot of students and colleagues to look up that craft center topic because a lot of discussion was around it, just like you're pointing out right now. Sean's exactly right. There have been no calcified decisions about it. For me, one of the things that's been very important is I want to understand the decisions we made for this current year and how they were arrived at. One of the things I appreciate about our students is the ones who are very passionate about the Craft Center, but even the ones who are episodic in their engagement with the Craft Center have seen value in it. And it started a much larger discussion that students enjoy having with me, which is help us explain and understand the reasoning behind some of these decisions. And anytime a student comes to me wanting to engage in that discussion, how can you not be as transparent as humanly possible with them? So I look forward to learning more about how we arrived at the decision from our colleagues in student affairs. But I think more importantly, there is going to be a rich discussion that occurs about how to best make the Craft Center a vibrant part of our campus moving forward. And I'm quite certain that there's going to be good discussion about that. So more to come on that.
That's helpful. Thank you, Celestino. Our next question comes from Tobias McCabe, class of 21, and it's really a two-part question. So the first is wondering specifically how Kenyon is caring for high-risk students at this time, and if there are specific plans to protect those students. So I'm assuming that one's COVID related, Drew, so I'm going to throw that one your way.
Yeah, thank you, Colleen. So yeah, of course, we're very concerned about students who face particular risk from COVID infection. Primarily, these are our small number of unvaccinated students who were using monitoring testing each week. They have to test in order to, because of course the danger of contracting the disease is both higher for them and the potential outcomes are worse not being vaccinated. Many of those are for medical reasons. And so we're monitoring those students closely. Additionally, students who have particular risk factors in their medical history are in close contact with the Cox Health and Counseling Center, and if they're implicated as a close contact of a case, they're encouraged to consult with the Cox Center to head off any particular risks that they face.
Thank you, Drew. So the second part of Tobias's question is also echoed by another questioner, Amy Haid, class of 92, and that's primarily about residential facilities, including the newly announced housing, how that relates to growing the overall enrollment in the strategic plan. And Amy notes, of course, that housing is profoundly important for attracting new students and also in the psychology of first-year students. So, Sean, would you like to talk a little bit about our plans for housing?
Sure. And, we are, last year, sort of began and undertook a study of both housing and dining on campus. On the housing front, the outcome of that was a long-term plan to renovate all of our housing stock on campus, including our historic housing on the south side of campus, but also first-year housing and the Mather McBride and the full package of housing. And then in addition, as we announced last spring, we have had the wonderful opportunity of a gift to support the construction of 3 new residence halls on the south end of campus. These will be a mix of suite style and apartment style housing that will allow us to both increase our number of beds and also to decommission some housing that is, at least according to some student and alumni opinion, in need of decommissioning in terms of the new apartments and other places on campus. So we will be both renovating and increasing our housing stock over the next 10 to 15 years and carrying this out hand in hand with the plan to grow the student body so that the infrastructure of campus can match the needs and the size of the student body. We also did a study, began a study of dining on campus to make sure that we have resources on campus to support dining of a larger student body over time. And also to explore one of the things that our COVID changes on campus brought, that probably will be with us for a while, is takeout dining, or the sort of desire of kind of takeout and more grab and go type dining options around campus. And so we've collected some student feedback on that. We'll be further exploring this with students this year, but making sure that we not only have the capacity for supporting dining on campus, but that we are kind of meeting current student interest and demand for the shape that that dining might take.
Thank you, Sean. So I know our time is running out. It seems only appropriate in college ranking seasons that we end with the question posed by Murray Smith, class of 1975, who wants to ask a little bit more about the U.S. News and World Report rankings, noting that Kenyon's relatively high tuition and fees, and wonders, how you respond to that.
And this is something that is very important, a very important part of our larger strategic plan work as well. Kenyon is a very tuition dependent institution. So more than 80% of our revenue each year comes from tuition and fees. And that includes actually our support for financial aid. So it's about 80% of our financial aid budget actually comes from tuition dollars each year, which puts us in this kind of unfortunate cycle of to increase our financial aid budget without actually increasing our endowment means that the mechanism is to increase tuition or reduce services in a different part of campus. As part of both the specific initiatives of the Kenyan Access Initiative, but also the work of the strategic plan, as we grow our endowment resources, that will allow us to expand financial aid opportunities without putting pressure on the operating budget and doing that through endowment. And that's going to be very important for us to do. And in addition, the work of the strategic plan and kind of adding putting an emphasis on how we can make better use of the resources we have and to make sure we're strengthening our overall financial base will also allow us to slow the growth of tuition over time. So it's a key part of our strategic plan to slow the growth of tuition. We recognize that tuition is increasingly challenging, not just for middle-class families, but for all families who come to Kenyon. And so making sure that we are being attentive to that is a key part of making Kenyon accessible as well.
Thank you, Sean. And just a reminder, we did put a link in the chat if you'd like to dive in a little bit more to the strategic plan. Our hour always goes so fast, but we know that Zoom fatigue is real. And so we want to end on time. And thank you so much for spending the last hour reconnecting with us at Kenyon. My sincere thanks to Sean, Drew, Jeff, and Celestino for joining us tonight. You can find more about the Schuler match at kenyon.edu/Schuler. It's SCHULER. And as I mentioned, we're really excited about a broad announcement that you can watch for next week. So thanks again for joining us this evening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the night.